Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to start you off with a satellite animation from yesterday because the cutoff low we watched all weekend sit and spin over the Four Corner states did finally eject. And as I moved across parts of the plains, it brought some rain to places that have not seen rain in a very long time. I'm talking about the Central Plains and eventually a bit more into the Midwest and parts of the Corn Belt. It's kind of funny. Last night I got a text message from a friend in Lincoln. He's like, there's just some strange stuff going on in the sky. And I was surprised because I just didn't get it. I looked at the text. I'm like, all right, maybe he's going to send a picture. I don't know what he's talking about. And then I realized later when I messaged him back that he was talking about rain. I mean, it's the first time in some of these places that we've seen some decent moisture in not just some time, but in a very long time, some places over 60 days. So as we just watch that low curl out, we have to ask where it's going to be going in the near term. I do want to show you that we did get some hail out of this. So this is the last 3 days of hail. As you remember, there was a lot of flooding in parts of New Mexico. We've probably seen some of the videos of that flooding, but several inches of rain, 4 or 5 inches of rain in places here. But back on the hail, some of the hail streaks from some of these storms did do some damage, and some of that got out into the southern plains last night, leaving New Mexico and the panhandle of Texas. But the importance of this rain is, I think, illustrated in this map, which shows us, the last 30 days as a percent of normal. And basically, everything you just saw in the previous map is now captured here. And even though you see such wet conditions in parts of the Ohio Valley, remember, almost all of this was from Helene. And since then, we've measured nothing. And remember, that was way back at the end of September, meaning that in a couple of days' time, all of this is going to go dark red as this 30-day sliding window, moves, forward in time. What this means is there's a significant portion of the United States that's extremely dry. And so yesterday I tweeted out a map. I also put in my report a suite of maps, actually, that look back at the same time period, October 21st, for 2021, 22, 23, and 24. And as you look at it, we've had these 3 falls in a row, here and here, where things were exceptionally dry. Now, if you notice a little bit of difference in the map from 2021, this is when they used a different color bar. It was very difficult for colorblind people to see the transition across this color spectrum. So that's when they went to the one that shifts all the way to the blue. But the reality here is that you can still use this same part of the spectrum, and you'll notice that in 22 and 23 and now in 24, we've had extensive fall droughts. And I was just thinking a lot about this as I put this out on Twitter last night, or yesterday morning, going, what is it? Does it mean anything? What? So I would like to follow up that conversation. And I want to be very clear about something. Everything I'm about to share with you is highly speculative. Okay, so we're going to make an assumption about the next 7 or 8 months, actually more than that, based upon just limited information. And we don't even know how this whole thing's going to go. But I do know this, right? We've talked extensively about this La Nina that we expect to have an influence this winter. We know there's very warm water here off the coast of Japan, cold water that's dipping into the Gulf of Alaska. We're curious how that is going to influence the winter pattern. But I'm also curious about its lingering effects into next year. And if you remember from a report I did, last week or the week before, I showed you this map. I said, what if we have a weak La Nina? Is there anything we can say about what the next growing season may be? And I'm defining the growing season as May to August. So really, it's just late spring and summer that I'm including in this analysis. So what we did is we went out and looked at all of the weak La Nina years. Here they are. And we made some composite maps. When I say we, I did this. I say, so I don't want to attribute anybody else to this analysis because it's so speculative, all right? And this is what I found. You notice that the center part of the United States tended to be drier than average, and you can see the color bar at the bottom here. And we tend to be warm. So it was a hot and dry summer in the northern plains, upper Midwest, major parts of the Corn Belt, digging down into the southern plains. We were wetter, cooler up the East Coast when you look at a composite of all those years. Now, you have to be careful, or I have to be careful, showing you composites. And the reason is, not every one of these years was dry. What we're doing is we're adding them all up and dividing by the total number, and that's how you get the deviation from average. So 2023 is in this. And remember, 2023 was the record bottom, driest in this area. So we're including that in the analysis. For many, wait a minute, 2009 was a phenomenal year. Yeah, but it was not enough to offset 2023. So we just have to be careful not to make this a kind of black and white, a yes or no, a 1 or a 0 type analysis. It's adding them all up and dividing. But, I was getting concerned about that, given that that's what happened when we followed up a weak La Nina. So I went and did something else. I said, well, is there any correlation or any sort of composite analysis we can do by looking at the central National Weather Service region? So that is where we've got such extensive drought right now. And I said, let's go back and look at all of the September and Octobers and look at their total precipitation, because that's when it got really dry here. It's been the last 45, 50 days. So what I did is you can rank them. That's what I did here at the bottom. And we looked at all the driest, and we started to build more composite maps. So I'm going to go right to next year. When you look at all of those really dry falls, all right, and look at them all and add them all up, understanding you've got years like 2012 in here, 1988 in here, 2023. Those are some big dogs for really dry conditions in the Midwest. Could they be biasing this drier? Absolutely. If I took them out, you would not see such strong anomalies. But the reality is that those were years where we had dry falls, and we carried that over into the following spring in this area. In fact, even into the Northeast as well. So we're trying to understand if what's going on right now is posing a big risk for next year. And just understand, none of this is scenario analysis. None of this is probability. None of this is me saying, oh, the chances increase to or decrease to. No, it's just adding it up and dividing, and we're using all the years in there. So that was May to August in those years following dry falls. So then I went out and I said, well, what about the temperature during that time frame? And we were cooler on the coasts, and we were warm in the middle part of the country, and that all boils down to a pipe pattern. Now, remember, I've got some years in here like in the 1950s and 60s, and so you're going to wait, I don't see any major epicenters of ridging. Well, they're here. There's the triple high pattern that we often get concerned about, with high pressure there, the Bermuda high leaving, going up toward Iceland rather than staying between, maybe the Azores and down here toward the Cape Verde Islands and Bermuda, so it's displaced. There tend to be a Pacific high somewhere in here. So the flow tended to go over, let's try that again. Tended to go over this ridge down here, so, slow and weak through this area, and then it tended to pop back up there. So that's 1, 2, 3 ridges that we tended to find in the following years. That again, this is May to August. All right, so then I'm like, wait a second. Can we look at the years? Can we look at those years again and just figure out what happened after the dry fall, like November to January? And this is where it gets really important here. If you noticed, we're looking at the dry September and Octobers in the central United States and saying, well, what happened in November, December, January? They stayed dry in these areas. See this? And very dry in the south. In fact, most of those winters in through here were relatively inactive early. Not a lot of precipitation. In other words, we didn't break the drought cycle in this area. In fact, we built it farther to the south in most of those years. Now, the Climate Prediction Center's current forecast for November through January is dry in the south. But it's not dry in this area. It's actually calling for near normal precip, in fact, above normal precip in the Great Lakes states, and above normal precipitation in the Northwest, and all of the models are. So that doesn't line up exactly with this. Here it does, but not so much here, and certainly not here. Okay? But then I said, well, what about the January through Marches? And if you just kind of notice, we were drier in California, drier in Texas, wetter in the Northwest, near normal here, but wetter in the Southeast. Can you see that pattern? That's what happened in those January to Marches that followed dry falls. And so you look at that and go, well, what's the current CPC forecast? Well, it is wetter here, but it's much wetter in the Ohio Valley with drier to the south. The temperature pattern is such that we got quite a bit of better chance of, this is an actual probability map, by the way, of getting cold here and staying warm to the south. A complete flip-flop of last year. So this is a little bit more aligned, but this is certainly wetter here and here. So a lot is going to come down to how this winter takes shape, the speed at which this La Nina, moves toward its peak and then fades. But until I have evidence to overturn it, I'm letting this rent a lot of space in my brain. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm thinking hard about it and wondering if we're starting to see just a recipe for cause of concern in 2025. And that's why I wanted to present this analysis to you. And I want to let you know something. I'm just going to say it again. This is extremely speculative. There are 1,000 different sub-seasonal things that could completely trash this forecast. And again, that's why we look at this stuff every day. But I wanted to put this in the back of your mind so that you know what I'm thinking about. All right? So let's get back to what's going on right now. This is today's all hazards weather map. Not a whole lot going on. We do have some fire risk in this area due to some stronger winds and extremely dry conditions, which we, of course, have been looking at. It is interesting if we just look at the radar. Let's get an update on this. There we go. There's some of the moisture moving out of parts of eastern Nebraska, getting into parts of Missouri and Iowa. First rain in this area in an extremely long time. It's trying to cross the Mississippi early this morning. We have some decent moisture, of which some of it is snow across the north here in Canada, but moving out of Montana into into North Dakota and southern Manitoba. Again, this isn't heavy precipitation, but it's something that these areas, have not seen or measured in a very, very long time. So let's kind of flip this over to the high-res NAM and just see where it's going to go. Let's pick it up about now. So notice the NAM didn't even pick up much on that precip. It did better with this. But playing this forward, we have a front going through the Great Lakes, through parts of Ontario, some light snow on the backside, high pressure builds back in, and this thing you see over here is Oscar. Wait, Oscar? Yeah, Oscar, sorry. And we'll take a look at that again in a second. But I do want to note that by Wednesday, another chance of front sliding through parts of the Pacific Northwest, bringing in some higher elevation snow and some valley rains here. So this is Wednesday at 9 p.m. Let's just play it out to see where that system moves by the time we get into Thursday, right? So it just kind of slides through here, adding just a little bit of precipitation. Now, a quick update on Oscar. Again, named a hurricane over the weekend. It is now down to tropical storm strength and expected to weaken as it moves on off toward the north and east. So here was just kind of what we were seeing, the reflection of that in the animation. But we kind of get to this bigger picture of things. In fact, let's update this. I reran... Slide right down. Okay, I reran the NBM. For some reason, it failed this morning. Only downloaded 72 hours, and my failsafe didn't catch it. So this will get fixed soon. But you can see European AIFS. That's the artificial intelligence. GFS here. WPC. There's not a whole lot of precipitation baked into this pattern. Let's just open this image in a new tab so you can see it a little bit closer here. But that's the next 7 days overall. And as I look through this, remember it's about the 29th where the system coming into the west, which is adding decent precip here, starts to get going. So let's go have a look at it. I'm going to use the artificial intelligence to show you this. I think it's done a good job with the high pattern overall. So we've got pretty boring flow. There's the front I mentioned coming through on Tuesday into Wednesday into the northwest, and it kind of just fades into the midsection of the country by Thursday. So what we're waiting on is Friday. There it is. On Friday, the trough comes out of the Gulf of Alaska, hits the western United States. That's by Monday. That's what's going to start to increase the precip late this week into early next week in the northwest. And then there, that's what we've been waiting on. You can see there's a trough, a broader trough, and a ridge east. And that gets us going with flow out of the southwest, which is a major change. And it's all been around, the day before Halloween that this is coming out of the mountains, getting into the central U.S. Now, if we were going after a full pattern break, just barreling into an entirely different regime, what would end up happening after that? I see repeated troughs. Like we have another one on Halloween coming in through here, but that one seems to want to cut off and go all the way to Arizona. We tend to get into this bit more of a blocky pattern. See, with cutoff lows here, with large ridges running up the west coast of the United States. So in other words, we don't yet fully move into a new regime where there's just trough after trough after trough coming through the west coast. But we do have one that's coming through that's going to give us a chance at getting some moisture in place. So using the high resolution European model, we just play this forward. There's the rain, through this afternoon and this evening. And you can see what's left of Oscar here. Frontal boundary snuck through. Did you see that again? Comes through the Great Lakes into the northeast. Here's that weekend system, the late week system, the one that comes through the northwest, delivers just a little bit of precip that comes through the Midwest. There it is. And that's out. And then we have to get into the weekend. So here it is, Saturday. Watch Saturday into Sunday and Monday. This is when the activity starts to kick up. Ready? Look at the winds here. Extremely windy. See how tightly spaced those isobars are? Snow in the Rockies on the backside. The low curls up. Right now, its trajectory is to come through and head right toward Minnesota. Snow possible on the backside. When is this? This is Tuesday, October 29th. Plenty of moisture with this one, so it drags some decent precip through, kind of the heart of the driest conditions, and we watch it curl its way up toward the Hudson Bay. And that is at least something. It's a fall low pressure system. We've been on the lookout for that sucker for a while. So from there, I want to show you some other variables. Like first, let's talk about snow. How much are we going to be adding up here? Well, remember, this is all, let me refresh that. This is all coming in late. There we go. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. See that? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is when the coldest air is coming in. And remember, as the low kind of makes the turn, the European models got better chances for snow here that continue into this part of Ontario. So more mountain snows in the west and possibly some in the upper Midwest just in time for Halloween, which folks appear you're very, very familiar with this. I do want to show you some probability maps. This is the chance at getting over a ½ inch. So now we've seen this really begin to increase inside of this extremely dry area. Where are we still staying dry? Southwest, southeast, and up the east coast. This part of the Canadian prairie, very dry. And if we go look at the probability for snowfall, we go here. Let's just at least see if the chances are in the ensemble for a little bit of snow. And yeah, it's got it in the Rockies, and it's trying to suggest that something could get in the northern plains. So we're just going to watch this. The system that's just before Halloween, it's out there a ways, but it's the one that's come through that's finally going to bring some moisture. I do want to note that the Climate Prediction Center yesterday did increase. So the 29th through the 31st, the risk of heavy rains in through here. So that's consistent with some of the modeling we just saw. And we do have to understand the wind risk as well, the 29th through the 30th. Remember, we saw the tight spacing of the isobars. The GFS is really quite aggressive on these winds. So there's the stronger winds now, okay? But playing into Friday, Saturday, watch Sunday, Monday, there it is. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's when the winds are expected to get quite strong in this area. It was interesting. Some of the models this morning were also trying to do that. I mean, it is way out here. Do not look at this and go, holy cow, another massive hurricane hitting the southeast. Please, I even debated showing you this. I'm bringing this up mainly to illustrate one point, okay? Will this be there? No, this is a model artifact. But we do understand that right now we have to be paying attention to this. Let me take you back to the beginning of this animation and take you forward. The MJO is sweeping around. We're getting better evidence of tropical development at some point in the Caribbean late in this month. So I want to let you know that there is the risk of having another system come out of the Caribbean, the Western Caribbean, later in the month, and it's starting to show up in some of the models, but nothing is there now. If you watch this animation, there just is no deep low forming. That was simply a 6Z GFS model artifact, and don't read into it any more than that, okay? My point is just to say, with the MJO sweeping out of phase 4-5, coming back over to 6, 7, and 8, that this starts to take the lid off of the Western Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Gulf to allow better tropical convection. And that's a story we've had for a while about this, okay? All right, here's something else that's different. This is a 46-day forecast of the WPO. Now, you remember that for a long time we talked about negative WPO. But if we're going to look for something that's going to give a different outlook for the month of November, having this go positive for the front half of November on average, that is a signal that we're getting more ridging toward the Gulf of Alaska, toward the Bering Sea. So that could really shift the whole pattern towards something different in the month of November. And so we keep looking at this, right? And so we start to see, okay, there's a strong corridor of moisture coming in, and that could give us a jet that wants to do more of that, and this whole area stays, a bit on the wetter side of average. But I'm just going to make this point again. Even though I'm talking about rain getting into this area, this is not going to bust this drought. It took us 45, 50, 60 days to get into it, and we just can't take care of it in one November. So we just need to understand that while there's a wetter signal, this is not the end of a drought. Where I expect it to stay drier is in the southeast and the southern plains and getting up the east coast. I think that that's going to be a less active corridor unless we get a big shift in the North Atlantic Oscillation or the Arctic Oscillation. Again, that could help with delivering more systems to the east coast as we get into November. Right now, it's too early for me to be really conclusive on that. So I want to finish it up with a discussion on temperature and a bit on global weather. Frost risk map over the next 7 days. This is very common to see the frost risk map look like this in late October. If we look at what those high temperatures look like, here's today's highs, very hot in the central U.S., pressing east. Cool down in the northwest. That's when the little front comes through. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, still very hot in the southern plains. There's Friday. Remember, this is when we have the frontal boundary here, bringing in some moisture that goes over the Great Lakes toward the northeast on Saturday, but a quick rebound of temperatures behind it as we cool off the northeast on Sunday into Monday. It is after this that the real system comes through into the west. And if we look at the next 5 days, very hot. Day 5 through 10, there's the cool down that we're expecting. So, this just screams that, right? Ridging here out ahead of it. Very strong winds in the middle. Low pressure forming, following that line I just drew. And as a result, we get past that and we start to see some cooler weather settling into more of the central part of North America and western North America. Okay? So finishing things up with some global weather just quickly here. This is my global 10-day outlook. You can find this on agweather.com. It's right there on the front main page. Mainly, I wanted to see what was going on in South America in the context of the rest of the globe. But overall, the next 10 days continues to show above average precipitation here, a little drier in southern Brazil, northeastern Brazil, and better rains coming into Argentina as well out of this pattern. And so just got to ask a question. You show that high-res European model a lot. How did it do with the onset? It picked up on the signal for the rain early, but it overpredicted. There's still moisture in this, but I think it overpredicted the early rains here. But it didn't matter. They made a lot of planning progress on this. Okay, that's it. I'll keep these ideas running. Just want to remind you again, what I shared with you at the beginning is highly speculative, and I'm probably thinking a lot about it because I'm concerned about it. And that's how it works, right? We tend to just let stuff sit in our brains that we are overly worried about, and we just need to make sure we take a very objective look at the risk of drought in the next 10 months, 11 months across the central United States based off the current drought. But, it could all change in a heartbeat, and it sometimes does, and the atmosphere is ready to surprise me every morning. So we'll just talk again tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Thanks.